That brings us to item 6.3, which is to review and approve for an approval of the resolution 1540 endorsing the list of projects to be submitted to MDC for an update of the regional transportation plan sustainable community strategy. Staff report, Jean.
Good evening, CCAG Chair and Board. In June, the Board was given a presentation regarding the CCAG's call for projects in response to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission's update of Plan Bay Area 2040. At this meeting for your review and endorsement is a list of projects submitted by eligible project sponsors for inclusion in the update of Plan Bay Area 2040. At this time, only some fund sources are constrained, and it's likely that several project total costs will have to be adjusted downward during the project level assessment at MTC. Some long-range projects are already constrained by including only early portions of the project work, such as environmental or design phases. A listing of projects was presented to the CMP TAC on August 20th and recommended for endorsement. The same list of projects was also presented to CMEC Committee on August 31st. And the CMEC Committee recommended that the project list be submitted to CCAG Board along with some concerns regarding the Calera Parkway project due to concerns brought up by speakers during the public comment period. So after the projects are submitted to MTC, project level assessments will be conducted and scenario analysis will be conducted based on cumulative impacts of all the region's projects and measured against performance targets and the goals of the region. And so with that, I can take any questions that you might have.
If I may just add, the Regional Transportation Plan is a long-range document, a responsibility of the MTC and ABAG, and they update this every 4 years. Because it's a long-range planning document, and MTC asks us to coordinate all the planned projects in San Mateo County to be submitted to MTC. So projects being submitted are considered planned projects, but it does not guarantee funding because it's long range. It covers about 25 years. And individual projects still have to go through their own environmental analysis before it progresses to further down the line. So in other words, applicable SEQA and NEPA process has to be applied to individual projects.
So what you're saying is this has nothing to do with approval or moving forward on the project, it's more for the planning pieces.
Right, because this is the RTP, it's a planning document.
Okay, any other questions? With that said, I have several cards. There are blue cards in the back. There are 2 minutes for each presentation. This is a little different. And you'll hear Sandy timing you. So the first card that I have is from Councilmember John Keener.
Hello, everybody. I'm John Keener, council member from Pacifica, and I was among the Congestion Management Committee members that spoke against the Calera Parkway project. The Calera Parkway project would widen Highway 1 from 4 lanes to 6 lanes for 1.3 miles in southern Pacifica. And I want to give thanks to the CCAG staff for correcting project description. But the final EIR has been out for 2 years on this project, and Caltrans gave us 2 options, 6 lanes with and without the median. They rejected all other alternatives. The project is different from the rest of the projects on the list in that at least half the people in Pacifica are against it. So I would ask our rep to the MTC board to please highlight that opposition when the project comes up. Thank you.
And Leo Leon, followed by
Evening, Madam Chair. I'm here to convince you all, and board, here to convince you all that the Calera Parkway should be dropped in favor of further study and alternatives. To Mr. Keener's point, in the record of the Caltrans public hearings and draft EIR comments, those opposed to the project were 3-1. 3-1 against. This is a fact that was buried and not prominent, so you may not be aware of it, but it is in the final project report. So I ask you, I did turn in documentation for you. Everything has the source documents listed for you. It's nothing that I make up. It's all out of the documentation. In that documentation, you'll find out that the Calera Parkway does not even conform on 19 design features to its own Caltrans Highway Design Manual. Some of these design failures affect pedestrian, bicycle, and motorist safety. Before you even consider recommending this project, you need to be familiar with each and every one of those design inconsistencies. They do not even meet the highway standards of Caltrans itself. One of those being the landscape median. It is not recommended for freeways, yet it's included in the project. There are other similar and very critical design failures, such as the intersections are so wide, they're going to have to put pedestrian refuge barriers in the intersections. But guess what? They're not recommended for highway speeds of over 40 miles an hour. Calera Parkway is designed for 55. How do you want to be on a refuge island? You going to feel safe out there? You got kids going to feel safe out there? There's a lot more I can say about this. So I have 1 more minute?
That's the end
That's
of
it,
2
okay.
minutes. It goes fast.
I submitted
Thank you.
the documentation. Please take the time to review it and consider it. Thank you.
Mr. Ferrera, followed by Ms. Gordon.
Good evening, council members and supervisor. My name is Mike Ferrera. I am speaking here tonight for the Sierra Club. I'm the conservation chair for the Loma Prieta chapter. I'm on the executive committee, the political committee, and the 3 chapter committee that deals with Plan Bay Area. As you know, we litigated on the last Plan Bay Area, and the primary cause for our involvement was a concern that there was not thorough planning to support the priority development areas from a transportation standpoint. We settled on the basis that we'll do better the next time. I would like to speak to 2 things tonight. The first is that we do appreciate the BRT on El Camino, particularly undedicated lane, because you'll actually have an opportunity if you can get the funding to do it. Santa Clara County, I think, has chosen a not very successful approach of a dedicated lane that just seems to gather more opposition as time goes by. So they're losing time. As to the Calera Parkway, the Sierra Club's been opposed to that for at least 8 years that I know of. So we're consistent in that regard. And it's in your packet, you should have my written comments that I gave to CMEC, where there were at least, I think, 6 of your CMEC members that were critical of the project. I am critical of it because I use Highway 1 in the morning, and on non-school days, it's the best serious commute in San Mateo County. There is a problem with one intersection caused by the schools. Well, there's my 2 minutes.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Connie Gordon, hi, and followed by Al Bonner.
Good evening. My name is Haya Gordon. I live in Pacifica, and I represent Pacificans for Highway 1 Alternatives. The Calera Parkway project to widen Highway 1 in Pacifica should not be forwarded to the MTC for the following reasons. Number 1, Plan Bay Area calls for environmentally friendly approaches to transit. The Caltrans plan calls for adding lanes to Highway 1. Increasing roadway size leads to induced traffic demand. More roadway equals more cars equals more greenhouse gas emissions. There's no way around that. The project directly contradicts this goal of Plan Bay Area. Number 2, Coordinating the traffic signals with an intelligent traffic system is an alternative that needs to be implemented, but Caltrans has never included it. In fact, Caltrans rejected all alternatives but build and build bigger. It's no wonder that the California 2014 State Smart Transportation Initiative found that Caltrans's practices do not match current conditions. Number 3, there is significant public opposition to the project. The City Council election last November in Pacifica, 2 of the 3 candidates elected opposed the Caltrans plan front and center. The message was clear: the majority of voters do not support it for 2 reasons. The project is way too big and will result in more bottlenecks, not less congestion. The Pacifica City Council has never approved the highway widening plan. Without written evidence, which does not exist, it is time to put this falsehood to rest. We want to maintain Pacifica's natural beauty and small-town coastal atmosphere. We don't want to widen Highway 1, our main street. Remove the Calera Parkway project from the list that you forward to the MTC. Thank you very much.
Hal Bonner, followed by Lori Goldberg.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members. Yeah, I'm opposed to the Calera Parkway project. You've heard many good arguments about it. I can say I second all those. In addition to that, I'd like to remind everybody that the majority of voters in Pacifica do not want that project. They do not want it. John Keener ran on the platform of opposing the highway widening. The headline in the paper after the election was, "Pacifica voters elect John Keener to oppose the widening project." The majority of voters in Pacifica don't want it. You folks here tonight, just before our group is speaking, heard from the County Energy Watch program. Their main objective is to reduce greenhouse gases. The Calera Parkway project would do exactly the opposite. Exactly the opposite. So it's sort of like, in fact, maybe this is an odd analogy, but maybe it's like you folks driving with the brakes on and the gas pedal down at the same time. You're trying, on one hand, to reduce greenhouse gases and spending money to do that, and approving a project that would increase greenhouse gases. It just doesn't make any sense. Thank you.
Lori Goldberg, and the last card is Mary Kyla.
Hi, I live in Pacifica. I'm a concerned citizen. I'm against the Calera Creek project widening. It shouldn't happen. Here we have someone talking about commute.org and about these shuttles. Why is Pacifica not looking at shuttles for transportation for people going to work? We just recently had a situation where Caltrans was doing a little patching on Highway 1. It took me 2 hours, it took people longer than that, to go from Manor to Valimar where I live. I was so exhausted when I got home, I couldn't move. And that's just one example of what's going to happen to Highway 1 if you wind it, and with all the construction going on when that happens. So it's really a terrible idea, I think, and other alternatives have not been thought about. I mean, other than Valimar, when the school is going on there in Valimar in the morning, the traffic's awful because of the school, and nothing has ever been done about that situation. Sometimes I'm sitting at the light for 10 minutes and no traffic is moving. There needs to be something done with the signaling, the lights and the signals. Things like that that have not been mentioned. All we hear about is winding Highway 1. And when that happens, there's going to be more traffic, because there's already more traffic all over San Mateo County. Eventually that's just going to be a parking lot. We're all going to be sitting there for 10 hours to go from one area of Pacifica to the other, and it's going to be awful. People are going to really regret it. And in final closing, we need now more than ever to address and include the entire coastside Highway 1 corridor in our transportation planning. A piecemeal project and solutions have not and will not solve congestion on the Highway 1 corridor. We need a multi-jurisdictional approach that addresses all of Highway 1 users and communities along the coast. A comprehensive traffic study and plan with intelligent transportation solutions is a much better approach for Highway 1.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Goldberg. And Mary Kyleman, last card.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I support all the comments that were just said, in particular Leon's. Comments were always 3-1 publicly on any public conversation about this project, the proposed widening of Highway 1, the so-called Calera Parkway. I also, Haya Gordon couldn't have said it any better. I wish I had said that. The Calera Parkway is the worst possible project for Pacifica, environmentally, socially, economically. It makes Pacifica a worse, more dangerous place to live. It damages our economy. Even Caltrans admits their own proposed project does not solve any traffic congestion problems. And I think worst of all, they did not assess alternatives at all or in combination, sometimes not at all, sometimes not wholly. So the main thing is, I believe Hal Bonner mentioned earlier, when the school is not in session, there's not a traffic problem in town. Any kind of alternatives around that were not addressed. So I would ask that this project not be submitted to the MPTC. There are way too many problems. One of the main alternatives, intelligent transportation systems, is used all over the world. In Ohio, in China, right on our own 280. That would help us a lot if we could have that implemented instead, and we could have a professional outside consultant take a look at the different possible alternatives in combination to address traffic problems in Pacifica. It goes on. Everything they said is accurate. So thank you for your consideration. I hope you do not submit that project to the FTC. It's not worthy.
Thank you. Is there another? Okay.
Hi, thank you. Mark Stackbart, Pacifica. I'm in favor of the project. It should stay on the list. Pacifica is a town where no good deed ever goes unpunished. We've been discussing this since '78. Everything that was brought up tonight is really not germane to keeping it on the list. It's a study program, and we're far from finished on the litigation, which they instigated, and it's probably going to be in front of you for the next 5 or 6 years. It's not the end of Western civilization. It's a state highway, it's a regional arterial, it's the only way out of town for fully half the town. Ambulances are currently driving on the wrong side of the road to get out of town during commute hours. Schools are a problem, but then so are our own commuters. And between 5:30 and 7 every night, it backs up. The only solution is to add an additional acceleration, deceleration lane. There's no other way out of town. And we are the traffic. And as you know, there are buses, and they're not utilized. We're not going to walk to work. We tell people when we can, but 95% of people in town leave town to go to work in Silicon Valley principally. So it should remain on the list, and it should continue to remain on the list. There is a document in your agenda, a city endorsement letter from, I believe, 2009, might be 2006. Pete DeJarnett signed it. You all know him. Breland endorsed this. Measure rate passed overwhelmingly in Pacifica because of the inclusion of this project, and we're paying taxes, so we'd like to see the benefit. Thank you.
Thank you.
There is a letter from the city of Pacifica, 2006, in support of the project. So what it is that
That doesn't actually, what I'd like to have sort of, I mean, that,
you mean where the city stands right now?
I mean, it's
So
it's a
CCAG
discussion of-
CCAG, in response to MPC's request, CCAG did a county-wide call for projects. And eligible project sponsors include all the cities in San Mateo County. So City of Pacifica submitted this project. Staff from City of Pacifica submitted this project through that process.
So the city at this point is still thinking that it needs to be at least reviewed.
Yes.
And it isn't CCAG's goal to say it will go forward or won't go. I mean, it won't be done, or won't, there are other things that have to be done.
Right,
Or,
individual project detail analysis needs to be done outside of this process. And I understand that the project is in some sort of litigation right now.
so,
Then why is it on the list? It's in litigation.
Well, this is a list of planned projects, so it is eligible.
possible projects.
Yeah.
Not planned, but possible. So if you take it, well, that's, it's possible. If you take it off, it's definitely out.
Through the chair, could I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Process. So MPC gets these projects. Let's say MPC says, hey, we like this. We're gonna do this. Doesn't it have to go back to the city of Pacifica and they have to vote whether they want it or not?
Yes.
That's
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
If you're just curious, since I'm the only one sitting here from Pacifica and you're waiting for me to say something. Yes, go ahead.
Just make a quick comment. I mean, I represent this district in Pacifica, and I know it's extremely controversial. But we're not traffic engineers, and we're not going to analyze this project. It's really up to somebody else to do that. It's really up to the city. It's up to the citizens of Pacifica to decide if they want this or not want this. It's really inappropriate for us to make decisions on specific projects that come before us that are requested by city. So this is really not the forum to eliminate it from the consideration.
Question for staff. So if we were to remove a project, what does that mean? So if we were to remove the Clara Parkway project from the list of projects, does that mean that MTC can't fund it? What happens?
If the project is removed from the list and therefore not being submitted to MTC, then the project will not be able to move forward in terms of the project itself, because MTC, once they receive all the projects, they will go through a Bay Area-wide air quality analysis and to conform the entire long-range plan to the federal air quality requirements. If the project is not included in the mix, then the project cannot happen.
So I sit on the San Mateo County, several board members. I sit on the San Mateo County Transportation Authority. And so how many people or how many agencies would fund such a project? So you're saying, what you're saying, Sandy, is you're saying that the MTC, if this isn't put as one of the projects, that this couldn't be funded by the MTC, is that correct?
It cannot be funded, well, this has nothing to do with funding. MTC in the end may not be the one who provides any funding to this project, but MTC is the gatekeeper to make sure the project is on the list. If the project requires any type of federal actions down the line. So if the project is not on the list, then the project will not be able to receive any federal action. That's one thing. And the second thing is that if the project of this magnitude will require air quality analysis, and if it's not in the mix, then it's, what's the term, Jean? It's not allowed.
Yeah, we can't move forward in it under any circumstances because this project would be subjected to air quality analysis due to the widening. If the project's not on the list, it's not going to be, it can't compete for any kind of federal, state, or any sort of regional discretionary funds. In addition, it wouldn't be able to have any federal action, meaning NEPA or NEPA, so it couldn't complete the environmental phase, and therefore it probably wouldn't go anywhere.
Okay, so now do you want to hear?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It would seem to me that if the council, the current council and the current political environment of the town, it is up to you to withdraw it from the list.
You are correct. And it's not up to me personally. I sit here representing the council. The council had made a vote at one point to move the project forward, and that was to complete the EIR. Since the EIR was completed, we've been in various forms of litigation, as has the TA, as has Caltrans. Most of those are kind of coming to an end. At the end of that, our plan, and we agreed as council members in our strategic planning meeting last spring, to in fact have a series of public meetings that looked at the options that were all available, as well as our city manager is working on some additional information and bringing that forward to the community to have a community conversation. We would very much, and we all agreed as council members in the strategic planning meeting, to have those discussions with the community. And that's where we're at.
But they do not have.
They haven't happened at this point, yes.
But if they do happen and it's decided that you don't want to go forward, it would really be up to you to withdraw it from the
Exactly.
list.
The council would have to
Even
withdraw.
if we leave it on the list today and it moves up the ladder, right?
It actually, I think one of the speakers mentioned, was one of the pieces of the Measure A funding. That's long history, long in the past. It was talked about in general plan, it's talked about in various forms. As a problem area, what to do about it is what the controversy is about. And we have to come to some consensus as a community.
So if I may, I really don't think this is the forum in which the project is going to be determined. So, I would support going forward with approving it at this point and leaving it up to the city to settle later rather than want to take it off the list. But I don't think it's our place, the Brown Act, we're supposed to advertise when we're going to have these policy discussions and we have, kind of a one-sided representation here. So I leave that to the city. So I would move that we go ahead and adopt the list as it is.
Any other comments?
I'd like to make a comment.
Vice Chair was editing.
Okay.
As a commissioner for MTC, we are getting these projects throughout the 9 Bay Area counties. And the chances of most of them, one of them from each county going forward are very slim. And if you look, this is part of Plan Bay Area 2040. So these are, right now, this is what we need to do, is to get all the projects. And the more projects we see that are possible in the counties and in your cities, the more we know how much we have to go to the feds, to the states, to get the type of funding that are needed to get work on all the infrastructure. So if this was even a plan for a community, or that it was voted on by the council and the community was involved, it should be included.
It wasn't.
So I will move that forward as well.
Terry?
Just as a comment and to take some of the heat off of Pacifica and this one project, Brisbane has 3 humongous requests for projects which may have been requested by staff, but also would be very, especially if all 3 were to happen, we would just become one big interchange. We wouldn't even be a city anymore. We would be one giant interchange with through traffic trying to get to 101 up and stop. And so, looking at it and saying, oh, I don't like a particular project, I see why it needs to still be there and why it still needs to be on the list, because while all 3 are certainly not going to be a solution for Brisbane, one of them may be, and that's why it's staying on the list. So it's not that I want to take a project off or your project off, but I think that they all have implications far bigger than just
And just one last thing, and to your point about MTC, on the TA, we actually talked about the Measure A funding not that long ago, and the projects that we already had, and Carol, David, and Terry, you heard the same presentation I did. We've got half of what's already over the course of Measure A, so we're nowhere near funding everything. Okay. So, yes.
Just want to add that, when the projects get down to the wire, it also is considered how much community support there is.
Yes, absolutely.
If a project is kind of
Absolutely.
lost, you're not going to
Absolutely.
So I
I'm going to call a question. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? And any abstentions? And that passes unanimously.